let me start with the IoT foundation concept, because usually when we think about Internet of Things, we're considering that, well, something can be connected. So I don't know if you are you used to work in, or to go to house shops and so on. Probably you can see every time, with more frequently, you can see this kind of bulbs that can be remotely connected to your smart phone, and you can control the intensity, even the color, and so on. Well, this is IoT, and IoT is really is being democratized because the bulb is connected with your smartphone using internet. Remember, yesterday we talked about maybe you were able to connect your, I don't know, your voice recognition, maybe your smartwatch, your iWatch with your smartphone. If you use Bluetooth to make this connection, this is not Internet of Things. Remember, Internet of Things means that you are using internet, you are using cloud to move around the data that is used in order to communicate to devices. This is so crucial because the added value is when data is passing around between devices, but always having the point of connection always in the cloud. This is the moment where you can extract real knowledge, or you can confirm the validity of the data. Remember, when we are talking about patients, we are talking about drug manufacturing, the data must be not only variety or with a huge volume, or you have to access with a high speed. The idea is that the data must be valid always. We went through the Alcoa Plus principle, do you remember? Well, validity is a great topic, is a main characteristic, and this characteristic is because when the data is coming to the cloud, in the cloud, you are able to put more metadata around every single value. And as the space and storage is so cheap nowadays, you can put all those metadata that you need, because please don't try to save space. Nowadays, this is not a reality. You can use the space in order to get knowledge in the future. Well, the thing is that anything that is a device with digital features, with digital possibilities, availabilities, can be transformed nowadays in IoT systems. Okay. Well, and this is the progression. Do you remember the Moore's law that we have mentioned several times during the workshop? The same Moore's law is also applicable to the Internet of Things concept. It's curious because something, or is a study that Morse was doing, thinking just in microchips several years ago, it's applicable to many technologies that we are talking around fourth industrial revolution. The Internet of Things is one of them. But this is not a casualty. When Moore established his law, he was using the microchips, the amount of microchips embedded in the devices. At the end, we have a direct correlation, a direct link between these microchips with the devices and the number of devices that we are using. Could you see here the increase, the growth that we are experimenting regarding the number of devices that they are compatible with Internet of Things philosophy? Here we're talking about bulbs, but could you see now we can have our locks, doors using our mobile phones or whatever you can imagine. So everything is connected and everything is generating data. And this is the secret. Do you remember the Square use case, the guys that created this sweep device in order to pay if you want to buy a hot dog in California? It's the same. The secret or the gold, the business value is not in the device itself, is the data that you are generating on top. And this is one of the main basics. And again, the IoT foundation. So IoT is nowadays taking more importance because it's completely linked to the big data concept. So IoT, if we see the kind of different devices available in supermarkets, in house shops, and this kind of well, places, all of them, they are really variety. And the volume, well, it's not necessary to go deeply in the volume, but also the velocity. And here, the velocity, I think that it deserves a specific description about velocity. Yesterday, I introduced the concept of the protocol that we are using in Internet of Things. Well, not all protocols are valid when you are using IoT. You can use them, of course, but if you think in IoT like a critical device that is applied in a GXP environment in a medical service, you cannot use anything that you can that is available. The protocol, I mentioned HTTPS protocol. The HTTPS or the HTTP protocol that we're using for internet in order to navigate, to make browsers and so on, this protocol is so heavy. So there is a lot of metadata around any kind of message that we are sending through the internet that is larger than the message itself. Sometimes, just for example, if you are navigating using Google, every time that you change the web page, if you send the new link to internet in order to navigate and to visit the new page, the 80%, 85% of the message is used only for the prefix and the suffix and the header of the HTTPS message. The body, that at the end is the link, is only occupying the 15% of the message. So could you imagine sending data every second, every millisecond to internet, sending measurements about humidity, temperature, your geolocation, whatever? Could you imagine how much cost it send all those very simple messages because we have a heavy context around the real data that is bringing value? On the other hand, if you like technology, you can sniff a little bit these messages that they are going around browsers, between browsers and internet. If you sniff these messages, you will see that in the header, in the prefix and in the suffix, you can see your IP address, for example. You can see your geolocation based on the server that is communicated to internet. So there are metadata that could be interesting to get, but it doesn't pay the 80% of the weight of each message. For the reason when we talk about velocity and we talk about volume, we need to talk about new protocols. And the STAR protocol used in IoT is the MQTT. It's very technical, but I think that it's necessary that you know that. When you are working with IoT, and if you want to work in a collaborative network of IoT devices, please don't configure them using HTTPS. This is my advice, because you will collapse your network. Use different protocols that they are more lighter, like for example MQTT. Why? The idea is that if you have to send several times per minute measurements that they are not too huge, as I mentioned before, temperatures, speeds, power consumption, whatever, it's not needed to send every time this huge header, footer, and prefix. So you can collapse that using more lighter protocols. This is very important in order to protect your network, and even more if we have bandwidth restrictions, and even more if we don't have a homogeneous distribution of this bandwidth, as we mentioned yesterday in Cuba, or also we talked about that in Slovenia. So usually these kind of devices, they have the opportunity to modify, to customize these protocols. If you want, and if you can, please try to configure that using lighter protocols. Okay, good point. More things. the following thing. This is very curious. Everyone thinks that IoT is something new. We are living a new experience regarding Internet of Things and how Internet of Things is changing, or how Internet of Things is shifting and is boosting the fourth industrial revolution. Well, this is the reality, my friends. I think that it's needed to share that with you, because at the end, we are experimenting the result of the wave that is happening during our history. So we have experimented in the 60s and the 70s centralized systems with the first computers, and in the 80s and 90s, decentralized architecture was transformed into a decentralized architecture, because the new servers concept appeared in this era. Maybe all people like me, we can remember that. Maybe the young people in the between the attendees, this is so far away from today. But this is the reality. We already lived that in the past, this decentralization. And again, when we were talking about the decentralization regarding cloud mobile systems, we talk again about systems that were centralized. They were centralizing everything, all the signals coming from the computers and systems around companies, organizations, and countries. Nowadays, we are living again the decentralization. Well, this is the core of the architectures. Of course, the technology that is behind each architecture is evolving, and this wave, it's needed in order to understand, in order to create new opportunities using the new technology that disappeared. But probably we will have, well, very soon maybe, a new centralized system. And maybe we can smell something of the coming architectures that they are, again, thinking in a centralized systems. But I think that it's important that knowing that there is this wave already in the history, maybe we can think that if we want to implement our fourth industrial revolution in our industries, in our organizations, in our institutions, maybe we should think in how we are ready to prepare for the next step of the new phase of the centralization again. Okay, so maybe that is some philosophical concept that's true, and you can see here that the length of the waves are more or less 10 years. Could you see? 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. So in 2030, maybe we have to think about how to move from the decentralized situation to a centralized one. Okay. It's curious to know, to looking backwards, because we can learn a lot. Well, we have talked about Internet of Things, but let me add an attribute, a new adjective to Internet of Things. When we talk about Internet of Things, if we are talking in terms of industrial environments, for critical environments like drug manufacturing is, or for medical value chains, imagine that you are making a surgical intervention. So our Internet of Things that they are taking measures on real time cannot rely in a system that is not robust enough. So when we talk about these critical environments, we talk about IIoT, Industrial Internet of Things. This is so important. Why? I don't know if you are used to work with Arduinos, Raspberry Pis. Do you know that these boards, that they are so cheap? Today, for example, we can acquire a Raspberry Pi that has more power computing than a classical laptop or a classical computer since 5 years ago. And the price is really cheap, only $35. And we can have a very power computing, $35. And we have all the connectivity. We have all the pins, we have ability to connect with our screen, with monitors, keyboards, and so on. Well, $35. But This board, this Raspberry Pi or this Arduino cannot work itself in an industrial environment. This board is not protected for overload on the electricity power supply, or they are not ready to work in dangerous rooms, for example, with under attic situation with explosive powders. So there are many conditions that they must be considered when you work with Internet of Things in terms of industrial environments. The protocol was one of them in terms of informatics, in terms of power computing. The protocol is so crucial in order to don't collapse the network. But what happens in the edge? The edge must be also protected. And that means that the hardware that you are using in order to get data, to connect with devices, they must be also robust enough. So they have been well protected against external conditions, humidity that is affecting a lot the circuits, everything that you need to put in protection in order to be more safe and more robust, in order to guarantee the result of your processes, must be also put around the hardware that you're using as Internet of Things. This is so critical. For example, you can create your own meteorological station for around $50 because you can have one thermometer sensor for $3. You can have your humidity sensor by $1.50 and so on. And all of them connected to your Raspberry Pi, only $35. But this is not robust. This is not industrial Internet of Things. This is just to play and just to experiment at home. So please, when you are designing your Internet of Things components, think you have to think also in this kind of robustness that is required. Well, this is the concept of the industrial Internet of Things. The concept of machine to machine, maybe you have listened that, is the old old-fashioned way to understand the initial steps in order to create this this new technology. Do you remember the original domotics? The original domotics, they were creating the controls in the house, open the doors, lock the doors, open the lights, switch off or switch on the heater and so on, because all the systems were interconnected between them, between the device and the computer or the board that they were registering or controlling the system. That was machine to machine because they were physically connected using wires, using Bluetooth, using something that they were connected between both systems. Remember, when we talk about Internet of Things, everything, all data generated in the systems, they are moving through the cloud. Trains with high-speed trains, Teslas, the autonomous cars, everything is sending information to the cloud, and the cloud is sending the information again to the car. So probably here it appears a lot of questions to you, or maybe a lot of concerns are coming to your minds. Probably what happens if we don't have internet connection? What happens if we are in a dark area, for example, a tunnel, when you are crossing a tunnel? What happens in these moments? I don't know if you were thinking on that, but what happens if, do you remember that I explained how the US Army is developing surgical interventions, remote surgical interventions using augmented reality, virtual reality, using this kind of IoT systems. And nowadays they are making surgical interventions from San Diego into an helicopter that is flying on Afghanistan. And how we can rely on this kind of mechanisms that are totally dependent of internet. So that means that internet must be robust enough in order to support potential contingencies during the process. Well, what is the secret? I don't know if you can imagine or you can think out how to transform this IoT into an industrial IoT. Well, there are many, many mechanisms. And the good news is that there is a lot of literature, there is a lot of information and physical and source code that you can download from the internet, where you can have, for example, protocols, internal protocols made by software, where you are establishing not only the bidirectional, could you see the arrows, the bidirectional sense is so important in this architecture. So you can establish not only the bidirectional communication between the cloud and systems, also you are integrating in the edge, and we will talk about the edge when we talk about a premise installation, in the trains, in the iWatch, in the smartphones or whatever. You are adding on these devices at the edge system software that they are making more robust your process. For example, putting a little bit of AI that can run in an autonomous way with the immediate data that you have already acquired. Or, for example, you are providing a minimum storage at the edge in order to save the data locally if we don't have cloud or internet connection. Of course, until show a specific limit, no? Of course, we cannot create an iWatch with 1 petabyte of storage. That doesn't make sense. But the system is able to condense local information and wait until we have, again, cloud connectivity. This kind of systems, this kind of attributes, not only the hardware, not only the robustness of, well, the shield that we have to put around the device, also the software that is trying to manage and to prepare the system are part of this industrial concept. Well, this is important because if you are thinking in order to modernize your organization, it's important that you also consider these kind of things. You cannot only work with Internet of Things. You need to work with industrial Internet of Things. This is the only way that you can move forward without maintenance problems or with downtimes in your systems. Okay, this is really great. This is really great. Okay, so which is the IoT role inside the industrial Internet of Things? Which is the IoT role in the fourth industrial revolution context? Well, let me say, this is so critical, so critical. When we talk about AI in the next lecture, you will see that we can apply AI in different terms. You can apply AI, for example, if you have, I don't know, 10,000 spreadsheets where you have all the information coming from all your patients, or you have, I don't know, all the clinical trials already stored in these spreadsheets. You can try to, well, make your own research, finding, I don't know, the variables that they're explaining more this or the other one problem. Or you can have all the values coming from the critical process parameters during granulations, or upstream or downstream when you are making filtration, when you're working with your HPLCs in order to purify the drug downstream. These kind of things can be done by AI because maybe you have this data available, but this is not AI used for fourth industrial revolution. We will see that the AI field is a very old discipline. It's coming from the 50s, so it's nothing new. So my parents were working with that. So it's not in the fourth industrial revolution. Where is the fourth industrial revolution concept here? The fourth industrial revolution is coming when we are able to apply AI in real time in order to predict the immediate and the long-term events that could happen. So this is the secret. So we cannot talk about smart industries if we are not taking values on real time. Okay, so this is the magic and the power of the IoT concept. IoT It's not only acquiring data, it's not only bringing the metadata around the data because this IoT device is able to identify the IP, the geolocation, and so on. It's because the protocols, the robustness, the impact mitigation when we have a risk in the internet connection, whatever we can imagine, is embedded in the IoT in order to bring continuous data. And if we don't have, if we are not able to have these IoT sensors working on real time, we don't have all the power coming from this smart industry. Okay, so remember now the IoT role is not only data acquisition, it's data acquisition on real time and continuous processes. And that is bringing a lot of value. We will see that. I think that this is the key factor that makes different this decentralized architecture that we were presenting before. You remember this one? This is the main power. We are sending information on real time, and on real time, this decentralized brain is taking decisions in real time, sending the decisions to the edge, and making it possible and real. Okay, so real time is the differential attribute. And here is when we can create business. So any one of us with a calculator, with a spreadsheet, we can make analysis, but we can bring value in business if we put this analysis on real time. Okay. So this concept is very related with the industrial concept, industrial Internet of Things, because we have to guarantee this continuity in the service that data is bringing to the architecture. Okay. Well, what about moving the intelligence to the edge? What does it mean? Because when we talk about the decentralized system, is because I don't know if you had the chance to read a little bit the paper and the model, the maturity model that Bioforum published in 2016. It's a paper that I have made. I made some reference during the workshop. Is how they're envisioning the digital maturity plant in order to evolve in this journey by pharmaceutical industries. Okay, well, in all of them, in the evolution, Bioforum and also the work that we did in the Xavier University are identifying that the more power of AI and the system that is orchestrating everything should be in the cloud, because it's in the cloud where we have the ability to reproduce the cyber systems in order to create and maintain models, execute these models, create new models, and at the end, provide the final recommendation, prediction, pattern recognition, classification, whatever we can do. But remember, we're talking now about Internet of Things for industrial environments. We're not talking about IoT for schools or for research or to play at home. We're talking about IoT that is used in order to save lives. And in this case, we need to make this edge more powerful. And that means that we have to put some minimum intelligence at the edge in the IoT systems in order to be sure that if something happens, the system can work in a safe mode, let me say. Of course, we will not have the ability to run as in a perfect conditions we would like to work with, but at least the system is not completely broken. And this is really important. Okay, well, which kind of things we have to think about? This is important when you are defining your architectures in your countries. This is maybe more for the QANS team, because you are considering to create this ecosystem using your expertise and your data centers and so on. Well, it's important to have to monitor, let me say, it's really critical to monitoring the low latency that we need in order to be sure that all the communications are properly performed. And you'd have to identify which kind of, or which devices that they are using IoT, they are more critical than the other ones. So for the reason, it's necessary to establish maybe sometimes a full dedicated line or channel only for those systems that they are really, really critical. This is what happened with the same example of the surgical intervention, the remote surgical interventions that the US Army is doing. They are using their own specific channel for this kind of interventions. That's normal. So they cannot share the same internet channel with hackers, with people that is watching movies, whatever. So this is something that must be considered in the roadmap when you are creating a robust Industry 4.0 strategy. Okay, the same for robotics or autonomous vehicles. So if every single autonomous vehicle like Tesla has their own GSM card with a very unique ID that is establishing this direct connection to the cloud. And they have their own systems of communications. Okay. Well, time sensitive. So real-time data, it's totally required as we mentioned. But which is the cadency? Which frequency we have to configure our IoT? Well, let me explain you something that is happening nowadays in the pharma industry. There are different softwares like historians that they are collecting all the data generated in the floor, in the facility. These historians are software that they are accumulating, I don't know, pHs. I have 7, 7, 7.1, 7.2, 6.9. They are aggregating, they are accumulating this data per second, per, well, whatever is the frequency. The thing is that these softwares, they are coming from the classical world because they are using a centralized architecture. They are using a server and a local database on premise where they are storing that. These softwares, these applications, they are compressing the data using classical algorithms of compression. For example, imagine that you are sending 777 20 times. They are not saving, they are not storing 27s. They are stored just 7 per 20. But this is not allowed by law if you read the ACOA Plus. All the 7s, the 27s, must be recorded. So no compressions must be there because otherwise they are not legible. And even more, these 27s must be linked or must be joined with the metadata, timestamp, geolocations, and so on. So it's not valid from a regulatory perspective to have this kind of compressions because we are losing the auditability and the full traceability of every single value that we have. So if we want to be accurate in this kind of data management, data governance, compression is not allowed unless you are compressing also the metadata. Okay, the timestamp in UTC format, the timestamp with the time zone where the data were acquired, and so on. So the frequency that you are sending the information is so critical. Sometimes we say, I would like to save space with only maybe every 10 seconds, it's enough. Well, how we can apply the criteria about the frequency? The frequency must be established depending on how much sensitivity do you have in your device able to detect any kind of anomaly or aberrant value. And please remember, nowadays, the storage is so cheap. So it's better to don't have these 10 seconds of frequency, and maybe you can go to the 5 seconds of frequency because the storage is nothing. Okay. Well, the other thing is that customers don't want siloed systems or services. This is a reality nowadays. Nowadays, the countries and industries where they have already implemented some part or fully deployed fourth industrial techniques, they realized that they cannot work with specific cloud systems or proprietary cloud systems. This is the example of what about if I'm working with Google to store and to manage all my research topics, and I work with Azure for all those topics more related with manufacturing. Well, if they do that, they have a big problem because they will have many data, they will have big data connected in real time, but they are not connected between them. So they will have IoT and all the smart industry technology and architecture put in place, but they cannot take benefits from that. If you want to create your systems and you are developing your systems, you have to open, you have to keep, at least to keep open doors ready to be connected in the near future. This is so crucial if you don't want to work again with silos of data where you cannot extract the maximum benefit of your efforts. And I like a lot this concept because nowadays we cannot talk about Internet of Things. Nowadays this concept is coming and is more frequent. We talk about Internet of Everything, and this is the reality. So when we at the beginning, when Internet of Things was appeared as a key technology for the smart industry, they couldn't imagine only 10 years ago. They couldn't imagine that everything would be connected. And this is the reality. So we are not talking just about devices. We're talking about people that they allow to insert a chip under their skin in order to have, for example, fully communicated all the day, or maybe because they have the entrance content or critical information inside the skin. Or in medical surgery, we were talking about, for example, pacemakers. Pacemakers nowadays, they are using IoT technology, and the pacemaker is providing to the patient the ability to be connected every single second of his or her life. So patients with pacemakers that they are already connected through IoT, they are part of this Internet of Everything. They are continuous monitored, they are continuous checked and controlled by autonomous systems, not by doctors, autonomous systems. Another clear example, all people that they are risk or they may be required to be monitored, they can use this kind of systems just in the pocket, or it's not necessary to have that implanted in the body. They can bring the systems in the pocket, but they are monitored. So they are not monitoring the device, they are monitoring their activity, which is the pressure, the blood pressure, the coefficient of respiratory. So everything is being monitored thanks to this kind of devices that at the end, they are an extension of humans. And processes. I like especially the concept of process, because when we will see an example in this lecture, when we talk about Internet of Everything, please don't think just in physical things. Don't think just in persons or devices or wearables. Please think also in processes, because a process, a full process, maybe a manufacturing operation, a bioreaction phase, maybe a treatment, a phase of the treatment of a patient could be an IoT process. Okay, so nowadays the goal, and maybe this is part of this fifth industrial revolution that we have introduced several times, thinking on processes, thinking more globally, thinking big. This is part of the new Internet of Everything that is not future, is a reality nowadays. Okay. So this is important to when you are designing your IoT, your IIoT, your industrial IoT components, it's important to think also how these small pieces of devices, they are exchanging knowledge between them. Cobots, collaborative robots, that they were taking care about the surrounding around them. Not only with humans, because humans, the information coming from humans, they can bring, or they can have this information through the biosensors embedded, installed in the cobots. But between cobots, they can have an immediate communication and immediate interrelationship because they are continuously connected through the cloud. And they can have embedded inside the systems of the cobots their programs in order to dynamically act and react depending on which kind of actions the rest of the robots in the chain are doing. So it's like a concert. You have the director of the orchestra, and this director of the orchestra is in the cloud, and everything is moving synchronously and very in a smooth way, because all of them, they are looking at the director, but the director is not in front of them. The director is in the cloud, and the director is moving all the robots, all the cobots, and everything through the cloud. So you can bring value with your Internet of Things devices when you consider also the capacity to establish more direct connectivity with the rest of devices. And well, just making a short recap. This is the digital twin essentials. So we can have IoT's components connected through physical things, humans, geolocation, maybe your wearable that is indicating, or your car that is indicating where you are, maybe your electricity consumption, or maybe the light sensor or the weather sensor, whatever. Well, the thing is that we have a physical connection between the physical world, the real world, with a specific sensor. These sensors are more powerful nowadays because they don't have to be connected with the rest of sensors directly. So they are not using Bluetooth, they are not using infrared, they are not using these kind of things in order to connect against the other one. They only have to take care of how to send my information to the cloud. This is the only secret. And the cloud, remember these bidirectional arrows, the cloud will send to them how to act. Okay, so this is just a little web and a network of smart vehicles, when all of them, they are connected between them because they have this exchange between the cloud. And sensors are detecting different measurements, but the sensors are not used to communicate directly between the different vehicles. This is why when you arrive to a city, for example, when you arrive to San Francisco, the traffic lights are sending continuously the message of which is my status. I'm green, I'm yellow, I'm red. So cars can detect that not only because they can have vision. What happens if we have an advertisement or a truck that is hiding the traffic light? No. Well, the thing is that they can detect this traffic light status and they can brake the car because it's in red. But this is not because there is a sensor that is looking at the traffic light, because that could happen. A truck could be between the car and the traffic light. It's because everything is sending this data to the cloud. And well, this is the journey. I think that could be part of our thoughts, and maybe part of it's part actually is the part of the lab that we are gonna work just tomorrow, which is the journey that we have to follow if we want to adapt our business, our current activities, our professional activities to the immediate future. Well, again, I think that let me recap again in the same concept because it's important to have them clear in our mind. In the past, we worked with classical analytics, and we will see that later in the AI lecture. In the past, we worked with classical analytics. We had a static view about what happened in the past with the data that we had available. And this data was completely rigid because we were working with silos. My spreadsheet is a silo. So if I'm thinking in the smart industry, I cannot continue working anymore with spreadsheets because this is a silo. This is rigid data that I will able to extract only the knowledge that is inside this specific data. Only I can bring value when I consider the reality as it is. The reality is complex. The reality is made by multiple variables that maybe I was not aware when I created this spreadsheet. How I can bring value from the spreadsheet, the MES, the manufacturing execution system, the laboratory information management system, how I can bring value from the warehouse management system, it's not possible using a spreadsheet or classical data silos. So this is the past. And companies and institutions that they are still working in this way, well, they can keep their current status, but everyone around them, they are evolving. So the only way to be competitive nowadays is moving forward in this direction. And in the present, what happens nowadays? In the present, we have to consider this complex reality. Remember, the reality is multivariable. So humans, we are really good thinking and solving problems, complex problems. But we have a huge problem because we usually, for us, thinking in more than 3-4 dimensions is so hard. But the reality is multidimensional. And there are a lot of mechanisms that can help us in order to analyze this multivariability reality in our environment. And even more, when we talk about industrial operations, this is a really truth. So when you talk about your, I don't know, granulation, when you talk about the granulation operation, there are hundreds of variables. And if you're interested, for example, in a case like this one, the granulation, I invite you to go to or just let me know. We published in the ACB University a real use case using AI about how we could analyze the past data coming from a granulation process because a company, AstraZeneca, they had some problems with batches because they were not good. But the problem was that they were analyzing the typical variables that the subject matter expert they were used to work with. What happens when you are incorporating new variables that you didn't consider before? Well, the sky is opened to a new dimension because the complexity of things requires to have this vision. So at the end, this multivariability approach is bringing to you a deeper process knowledge. And finally, you are identifying that probably this spreadsheet that is always very rigid and has columns, numbers, strings, or number of bytes or whatever, in an unstructured way, you will discover that the reality is not structured. To be honest, it's totally unstructured. So how we can connect the past with the present? Well, the secret is to be adaptive. So you have to be ready to load this dynamic data, this data that is continuously changing multivariable, using this kind of technology like IoT. But remember that the secret of IoT is having sensors, or let me say devices, very, very specialized. One sensor, one IoT component is fully dedicated to just one thing. Take the geolocation, measure the power consumption, take the weather conditions. We are talking about many sensors that they are sending information to the cloud, but they don't have any other additional functionality. And I think that this is important to understand, because these sensors, they don't know anything about each other. They are atomic. They are applying very specific functionalities and very specialized functionalities. So they are so robust, they are optimized for this specific task that they have been designed. So please, if you want to implement this kind of technologies in your factory, in your site, try to don't put too much logic inside the sensors, trying to merge or to mix functionalities that could be split in other sensors. So as much atomized they are, more powerful will be the network. This is an advice that I would like to bring to you because so crucial. We're talking about very highly specialized systems that they are not connected between them. So you can do that in a more robust and can be maintained very easily, because otherwise they are too much complex. And they have the intelligence to receive from the cloud whatever they have to do. Okay, but this is simplifying a lot the systems. This strategy is making cheaper the structure and the architecture and the device itself. Okay, so this is the future. At the end, the future is having this kind of AI powered in the cloud and also in the edge, we will see later, to be adaptive. So the sensors are able to react in an adaptive way, but always thinking in these things.